Ladies and gentlemen, I have a bizarre fallacy for you. It's very widely believed. And it goes like this, and economists believe it, and, well, a hell of a lot of people believe it. It goes like this. If something happens, someone benefited. There's never anything that happens that someone didn't benefit from. Okay, it's a general principle some people use to look at the whole world with. Now, there may be things like acts of God, like who benefited from the flooding of St. Louis. Not St. Louis. Katrina flooded that city. What's that city? Baton Rouge? And some people would say there must have been somebody benefit from that, like an insurance company or something knew about the wall and didn't want it to work. They did want it to come down or something. Somebody had to benefit. Well, maybe that's an exception. Maybe we'll put that to the side, okay? Acts of God. But everything else people benefit from. In fact, I've heard that this has reached such a level of absurdity in the colleges that an official belief of college economics professors, this is probably an exaggeration, but one of their beliefs is that you would never find a $100 bill lying on the ground because someone would come and pick it up. So you will never find it, right? Economies maximize the use of everything at all times. You never find anything that's underutilized. Everything gets utilized in an economy, right? That's one of their general principles. And that is simply not true. Sometimes you will have underutilized things which need to be utilized in a better way or a different way or something like that. And you need to have a clearer view of the world than to just say that anything that happens someone benefited, because what if there were an event which hurt everyone involved? And you, let's say you are one of these people who believes this, and you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off looking for the perpetrators. Who did it? Who did it? Who's responsible? Who's guilty? Maybe you can find someone that's guilty, but you're not going to find anyone who did it, who perpetrated it, who benefited. Nobody wanted this. Nobody tried to make this happen. Maybe somebody pulled the switches and moved the levers that did make it happen, but they didn't want it to happen. They might have thought something different was going to happen, like all the people who were involved in the federal housing scandal and always trying to keep rates low and get more mortgages and more mortgages sold, always increase the number of mortgages even though the housing market's overheated and stuff. And the people who were responsible for creating that disaster were just federal nobodies, politicians. They didn't make much money, if any, or hundreds of thousands maybe if they were in on some scandal of it or something. Now, you cannot say that a many billion-dollar scandal has been organized to benefit anyone. And there are people out there saying that the banks are benefiting from this or that the government's benefiting from this. I mean, since the economy tanked, the government has gotten so much less in tax revenue. It's bizarre to think that the government would do this. And it's just silly. Look, it's a stupid way to look at the world to say that someone's benefiting, let's find them and beat their ass. Right? What we better do is figure out what logical mistakes were made. What plans were made beforehand and then carried out with disregard to the evidence. Who did what and when that made the disaster happen, rather than who benefited. Because there's not always going to be someone that benefits. Somebody asked Christopher Hitchens about the growth of this school nonsense of wanting to teach creationisms in the schools, school creationism hour. And it's been pretty much defeated everywhere it's been put on. But someone asked during a few years ago, while it was still active, it might still be active for all I know. Probably. There's probably some damn school board somewhere voting on it this week. But somebody asked Christopher Hitchens, why are these, they said it's obvious that if it's happening, someone's benefiting from it. So why are these people trying to get creationism taught in the schools? Who's going to benefit from this? What is this going to lead to? Right? And Hitchens just said yes, yes, and then he went on to make fun of he just accepted the guy's premise. Maybe it just went in one ear and out the other. And then he just went on to talk about the creationist rednecks, he calls it. He says, and I don't know what they're going to do, these rednecks. I don't know what they're going to do next. And so he just went and disregarded the guy's point. But this guy in the audience, and generally economists, and I'll now let you in on it since we're near the end of the video here. Generally speaking, people who believe in conspiracy theories think that there's always someone benefiting. You can always find someone this has happened for a reason that they wanted. And they actually believe that World War I and World War II and the existence of Soviet Russia and probably the fall of Soviet Russia and all kinds of other things, all of them are happening just to benefit somebody. There's never any such thing as a disaster. There's never any such thing as mistaken premises. There's no such thing as a philosophical mistake that might lead people down a plan of action that was no good. There's no such thing as making mistakes, ladies and gentlemen. These people believe that everything is on purpose. No such thing as mistakes. They are giving these people an awful lot of credit. So, next time you hear a conspiracy theory, or you say, well, it's all the reason they did this is big companies are making money off of it, or something like that, stop and ask yourself, are you really sure that it's not just a stupid philosophical mistake that somebody's made somewhere, and it's actually hurting a lot of people? So here's my closing comment on this. Who benefited from the Soviet Union's existence? How many people in the Soviet Union were how much better off than they would have been if Soviet Russia never existed and it just stayed in the hands of the czars? Zero. None. Living in Soviet Russia was shit. Nobody liked it. They had power. Their houses were mansions compared to the general Soviet population, right? Stalin had a cute little dacha out in the countryside and as many houses across the country as he wanted, I'm sure. Here's the problem in Soviet Russia. As rich as some of the politicians were able to get, and they weren't able to get very rich because they had regular low salaries. It was just all the state benefits. The fact that the state gives you a car and an apartment and clothes and food, and the state gives you everything. That's what it was in Soviet Russia. Not to be rich, but to be pampered by the state. Okay? All these people who were rich and pampered by the state were subject to execution and arrest at any time, including Stalin, or Khrushchev, or Brezhnev, or whoever else it was. Look at the fact that Gorbachev was even booted. So to think that anybody wanted the Soviet Union to exist for some reason to benefit themselves is just bizarre. And if you give me the case of the Soviet Union and say, well, okay, that existed philosophically as an accident, not to benefit anybody, well, then you're going to have to give it in some other cases too. Like this housing meltdown. I don't believe for a minute that anyone has engineered this. It's been engineered, but they didn't know what was going to happen. They were philosophical pragmatists who just keep their head in the sand. Short term, we want to keep rates low. That was their article of faith. We want to sell mortgages. We want people to own their own homes. Article of faith, and they just barreled forward until it all blew up. And nobody is any better off for it. We're all worse off. Just like everybody in Soviet Russia was worse off, including the dictators that ruled it and were subject to be killed and arrested at any time. So, watch out for this principle. Don't go making the mistake that no matter what happens, somebody had to benefit. Sometimes there's just mistakes. And sometimes we need to be better philosophers and thinkers and not just go searching after that selfish bastard. Finding a selfish bastard is not going to fix these things. Right? We've got to do it better the next time by learning from this, not by rooting out some selfish bastard.